Today I'm going to actually be working on fixing my childhood stuffed animal. I've had him since I was probably about 3 years old, but I really don't know when I got him. But I do remember when I was probably about 10, his seam started to come apart and I started fixing him. So I actually did a bunch of stitching, and I don't know if you can kind of see, I have some big ugly yellow thread in the back. And when the thread didn't hold, I would actually resort to using glue. So my daughter is really wanting to play with him, and she's picked him up and he started spewing kind of like these little beads out of him. So I taped him up with some duct tape. Anyways, that's not the way I'm going to do it. I actually am going to take and I'm going to give him a new life. So as you can see, his ear's already flopping. His fabric is good. So you know, looking at the fabric right here, this is his ear that opened up. The fabric is actually in really good condition. It's just the stitching. And for some reason, when they sewed it together, they used this like monofilament thread, which is just like plastic thread, and it's like when one little part comes out, the whole thing comes out. So, what my goal is I'm going to seam rip him apart, take him home, wash his outside fur, hopefully get it a little bit softer. I might try and see if there's some type of a brush I can use to revive him, and hopefully that'll brighten up his face a little bit, and then I'm going to restuff him. And because all of my seam rippers seem to walk away, I'm going to open up a new one. And I've also got other tools. I got little scissors, nippers, and a bag to put all my stuffing in. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. I'm going to reposition it so you can see what I'm doing. So we're really like making surgery. So I know his ear's falling apart. I could come up here and start taking this apart, but I want to take apart the big part first. So I'm going to come back here, and I don't know if you can see, I'm going to rip out my stitches from when I was about 10 years old. And actually, I can't believe my stitches lasted longer than the manufacturer's stitches. And it just goes to show that things that you do on your own, as opposed to wide-scale manufacturing, is sometimes better. So I'm working on him. You can see I've got glue on him. Hopefully the glue, I'm sure it was just Elmer's glue that I used, so hopefully that will come out. But I really haven't looked it up to see what the characteristics are. Anyways, that one's kind of hard. See, I've got up here the monofilament thread. And I'm just going to start, kind of take I don't want to rip his, I don't want to cut his fur. So I want to do the best I can. So I'm actually going to use kind of the picking part of the seam ripper. And I'm going to work on taking this apart, and I'll show you the pieces, and then I'm going to take them home tonight and wash them. So kind of going to the, like I said, going to the major seams first. Make sure you remember how this thing went together. So if you are working on a stuffed animal on yourself and are going to take one apart to fix it, then please take pictures and make sure you know what's going next to what. I'm actually really excited to get him working again. I've actually got 2 other stuffed animals that are kind of falling apart, but this one's probably the only one I'm going to fix because this is the only one my daughter's shown interest in. So there you go. So I've taken apart most of my bear. You can see he has these eyes and the nose, which are kind of, you know, stuck onto it. I'm not going to change them out. I could probably get replacement parts for the eye. I'm probably going to polish it up to get rid of some of the scratches. And then I'm going to give him a mouth again. So because of all the seams back here, I'm not going to take it all the way here. If I do, I'm going to have to do a bunch of hand stitching on the inside. But this monofilament thread is really strange. It's like they kind of did like an overlock on it, but it's not a true overlock. You know, this was made in the late 70s, so you know, who knows what technologies they had at that point and what they were using to do stuff. So I took him apart, and it was quite traumatizing a little bit, taking the guts out of him. But I've also noticed that the insides are basically like this, I think it's recycled. It looks like it's recycled foam and styrofoam, which is kind of strange. I mean, I'm saving it. I'm going to decide whether I'm going to put it back in him, but it's, I don't know if I want to put it back in him. He's filthy though. This is, I'm gonna take it apart all the way to the seams because I think it's eventually gonna come apart, and I'd rather just kind of fix him all up. So I'm gonna continue taking him apart, but I just wanted you to see the progress and, you know, what my bear looks like without anything in him. So I took him home and washed him, and he didn't come out as clean as I'd like him to. So I think what I'm going to do is, after I actually sew them together, I'm going to take them home and wash them again. I think my husband, he actually threw him in the dryer last night, and he was afraid to really dry him for much at all because he didn't want him to fall apart. But he stood up pretty well. He's still pretty dirty. So I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I've got this thing taken apart, that, hey, I actually have a stuffed bear pattern. So I'm going to do a tracing. So it's going to be a little bit harder to do the tracing on his face just because I didn't take the face completely apart. But I just found animal parts like eyes and nose and stuff. So maybe I'll even make like a little kit. So I'm putting this upside down so I can do this little tracing. Try and line it up with the grain, although I'm not really concerned. I can always do this later. And what I might even do is, since I've got my pattern grading software and drafting software, I might actually take and digitize this and grade them so I can actually have little bears too. Have patterns for little bears. So I'm just going to basically go right around this piece, and I'll clean it up with my ruler afterwards. I'm just doing a very rough trace because his hair is kind of getting in the way. And then this, I really think that this fabric was really, this was a straight piece and this was just sliced up the center. Kind of looking at the grain. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So I think they had very little waste on this. So I have my, what is this? This is the front, I think. Yep, this is the bear front. And this will also, looking at the pattern pieces, it'll also help me kind of understand a little bit more on how this thing was constructed. So you can see this one has, it has this little monofilament, like this fishing line thread that they use the whole thing, and that's actually what's on everything right now. It's just kind of, I couldn't get it all off. So I'm going to actually be sewing this with the overlock machine so I can kind of trim off the edges. Oh, and look, the leg was not cut straight. Oh well, okay, so I'm going to just work on tracing him off again. And here, this is kind of like a little dart that they did for shape of his butt, so he could actually sit down, so to speak. And this is kind of a little raglan, so there is a little corner right here. Come up here. This is, I believe, just a straight stitch down. I'm not sure what this was for, because this is for the neck. No, there must be a little V in here. So it helped shape his neck a little bit more. But down on the bottom, this is a straight line. And you know, there were some holes in it. Basically, this is where I glued when I was little. So I'm definitely, he's going to end up becoming a little bit smaller once I'm done with this. So this is the bear back. Okay, this is the back of his head. And see, he actually has a, stupid stuff. Okay, he actually has a little bit of a, well, thread still there. A little bit of a dart in the back of his head too. So it's actually kind of interesting because I've never really I mean, I've made stuffed animals, but I kind of made up my own pattern. And this was actually very thought out. So it's probably like a half inch or something. So this is back head. Okay, his arms are also kind of interesting. So this is his whole hand. It's kind of designed and sewn and put in like a raglan, which I think is quite fascinating. It's like you think of these animal parts as just like circles or squares, but this one was really constructed, and maybe it's just because it is almost 40 years old, but it's constructed as a garment would be constructed, which is, I think, probably more than what a lot of them now are. Arm. Cut one up, cut one down. So we got two arms. Then we got the ears. And so you're going to have cut two up, cut two up, cut two down. Okay. And so the last one we got to do is the bear head. Now see, because I didn't take him completely apart, I can probably get most of the brown pattern in here. And actually this side I took out more than this one, so I'm actually going to work on this piece. I'm going to trace off his head. And so he has basically darts on his face. Okay, so basically right here. And I'll open that up just a little bit more. So that it comes in like that. And so what I'll do for him is I'll literally just copy this piece over here. And actually these might have even been, you know, these were separate pieces. So this is the side face. And this one, I'm going to look at how that's rounded. And it looks like it's about that much. Yeah, not very. So, face, top. And then the nose is going to be a little different because it's actually, I'm going to trace it off. So it starts kind of at a center. So I'm going to do a center. And then it kind of comes around. Actually, so I could do this with a series of pins or using the awl to mark it. I think that's about where that is. So then this kind of comes, so he's got a little bit of a snout in here. So, well, actually, let's see. So if that comes, like that. Okay, so this is, it's easier to do it with it folded on the side. So this here is fold right there. So this I'll just basically copy here like this. So this is the nose. And this one is kind of falling apart. It's actually, I must have sucked on this thing when I was little, but some of the fur is coming off here. But I do have to say that the fur did brighten up the dark part, the parts that are pretty dirty. But he is looking so filthy. I'm going to have to run him through the dryer a few times once I'm finished with him. I'm gonna probably get a little bit of like the polish for the, what do you call it, for the headlights, and try and buff some of this out. That, or maybe my husband has an idea of how to make his eyes a little bit nicer looking. But okay, so I pretty much just copied his pattern off, and then I want to try and figure out what gets constructed together. Now I kind of took him all apart in all sorts of areas, and what I'm thinking is, okay, where do we want him to, because there's going to be an opening, so where is the best place for him to open that we can seal up by hand? And I'm thinking it's probably either in the top of the back, which I think is where it was before, which is why it came apart, or maybe in the leg. So I'm going to decide that, you know, I probably should do it in the back. I'll probably do it this top part on the back. This will be where I close him up. So that'll be the last part that's sewn. Okay, so what I'll need to be doing, so the first step, we're going to sew our ears together. So we're going to have the right ear and the left ear. Then we're going to sew his face up. So we're going to sew his face. Then we're going to attach ears to face. And I might actually give him a little bit of a tongue. He used to have a tongue a long time ago. I have an old picture of him from when I was real little. And I'm going to add a pink felt tongue. And we'll see how long that lasts, because felt doesn't really have a weave to it. Okay, so after we got we're going to do the, I think the back of the head. Actually, you know what, I'm probably, you know, I'm going to do all the fronts together. So I'm going to do all the fronts, so then we're going to have, once we have this, and actually before we do that, we're going to have to take this piece, and let's see, so actually we're going to have to do the back darts. So the back darts are going to have to get sewn here. And then we can sew, we can actually do two things. We can sew the leg pieces together. Okay, sew legs. Legs center. 6, we're going to sew our sides. And then we're going to actually add our sleeves to the body. So 7 is going to be sleeves, or arms, the arms. And that, I'm just thinking because that's how we would be doing a raglan. We would put the sleeve on after we do that. So we got the arms, put sleeves. So the arms. Once we have that, then we're basically going to have kind of this giant opening thing here, because this is going to be attached to the sleeve. So then we're going to take and attach the, I'm going to do the front head to the front, and then I'm going to do the back head to the back. And then the last one is going to basically be, we're going to have to pull him inside out through, well actually I guess this will be how we pull him inside out, which is why I guess that slit's pretty big. Then we're going to sew the around on the head, around head, and then the last one is going to be to sew up his back. Sew up back. Now because I'm going to be doing that part, what I think I'd actually like to do is, I don't want this to unravel anymore. So I'm actually, since I'm overlocking everything else and I wouldn't be able to overlock this after I sew everything together, I think I'm going to overlock this and this, so at least we have that finished edge. And then when we actually pull it inside out, we won't have to do as difficult as a hand stitch to close him up. So